Okay. Again, and this will be the third in series on Manifesto for Islamic Reform. I'm Edip Yuksel. This is available in online bookstores, also available in PDF for free, and also online on 19.org, and also islamicreform.org. And this is Quran Reformist translation. This book, in fact, we included as an appendix here. And now I want to go to the second topic. Is about
stoning women.
Stoning to death. Usually women, we see, but according to the rule, in fact, men and women, but in practice, they do most of the time on women. And we see, unfortunately, some examples that even in Iran and Afghanistan, they stone to death is one of the most cruel punishment. In fact, unfortunately, there are many stoning to death in the Old Testament, and I don't think that it is divine. I think it is mistranslation of the word regime. Regime is excommunication. When you say shaitan in regime, God did not throw stones to Satan. Satan, first of all, was energy, and doesn't make sense. It means excommunicated. God says, and Satan did not die, correct? Shaitan in regime, you say. Means they excommunicated Satan. God rejected Satan because of his lying disobedience to God's law. But the word regime, later they distorted the meaning of it. They made it stoning to death. In fact, the Quran used the word regime other than the Satan. Always it is used by the disbelievers and polytheists as a threat to monotheists, like Abraham. Abraham's father says, we'll regime you, we'll excommunicate you. But there are multiple problems here. One, distortion of the meaning of a Quranic word, and second, mostly used by disbelievers as a threat to believers, because they were the majority status quo. They say, we'll excommunicate you. Now, stoning to death is the most cruel and the most bizarre, ridiculous story ever in the history of a popular religion. I'm not talking about small cults religion, but religions that has so incredibly accepted by smart people.
Yeah.
And the Quran, there is no stoning to death. There is punishment is for adultery. Adultery means you are married, you are betraying the contract, you are fooling your wife, and then you may bring diseases, you may end up with the children, complicate their life. And this is obviously, it is a legal issue, it is the right of another person, it's not a moral issue. Moral issues in the Quran are not, pay attention, moral issues are not, if there is any moral sin, is not penalized. There is no penalty offered in the Quran. You cannot have an Islamic country with moral police. You cannot enforce the prohibition of let's say drinking alcohol or drugs in a Muslim country. You cannot illegalize. It is immoral, yes. You can talk against it, you can try to educate people against them, but by using government, you cannot enforce it. But if it becomes danger to someone else, let's say drunk driving, yes, you can penalize if someone is drinking and driving at the same time. But whenever it is moral choice, personal decision, it's only harming that person, you leave it. According to the Quran, you cannot really stop that person. It is encroaching to their rights. In previous discussion, we talked about freedom of expression, freedom of religion. Now, stoning to death, it involves another person, obviously, but the Quran says jalda means it is public shaming, and within those people should be accepting the Quran jurisprudence. You cannot impose on someone who does not accept it. There are certain rules in the Quran. I discuss it in the translation of the Quran. You can look at that. But stoning to death is absolutely fabrication later. And then they fabricated even a verse about that. Well, it's not in the Quran. Well, the story goes like this. And you can find this in Sunnis hadith books. They call it Sihah, Kutub al-Sittah, 6 supposedly trustworthy hadith books. In Shiite, there are other hadith books in those. Well, you say, well, there's no stoning to death. Where to find it? Well, there was a verse. It was in the Quran, And the verse says, الشيخ والشيخة إذا زنيا فرجموهما البتة. Very interesting. Anyone who's familiar with the words of the Quran, we know that sheikh and sheikha does not mean the intended meaning here. Sheikha in the Quran means old man, old woman. But here they mean it, the married man and married woman. Okay, let's accept this one, which is not according to Quranic terminology, obviously later fabrication. When they commit adultery, stone them to death. Stone them. And you say it's not in the Quran. Well, what happened, after Prophet Muhammad, he passed away. When they say Prophet Muhammad, they fabricate something, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, which they distort the meaning of that verse too, and they can keep listing long praise words after his name. And then they said, well, when he passed away, the Quran was written on skin, and this verse was on the skin, this particular verse alone, on the skin. It was under Aisha's bed. Aisha is a woman, Prophet Muhammad's wife, who is accused of adultery. Look at this connotation they fabricate, the lie. And then it was on Aisha's bed, yes. Who's fabricating this story? Aisha was accused of adultery, and fabricators, they talk about the adultery, verse about stoning to death about adultery. It was on Aisha's bed, nowhere else on Aisha's bed. Look at this, how clever way of association. And then what happened to that? Well, there was a goat, and he was hungry goat, and the goat came, ate it.
The dog ate my
I don't believe this silly story, okay? I don't think even well, goat ate it. There are other manuscripts written in people's mind, should survive. Well, let's assume, thank God, and then we are relieved of this verse, correct? Yes, it became mansukh, means it is abrogated. Thank God. Therefore, there is no stoning to death.
Yes. Someone wrote something and it came back.
No, they said, well, it was abrogated in writing. Means it is not anymore in the Quran because God ate it, and it was a holy goat, but it is valid as a law. Means as a law valid, but not in the book. What's the meaning of it? But this is one of the most ridiculous, stupid stories. And Ibn Qutaybah, he's one of the defenders of hadith after Shafi'i was one of the worst guys. And Ibn Qutaybah in his book, Ilm Mukhtalaf al-Ahadith, he called it Ilm Mukhtalaf al-Ahadith, the science of contradiction in hadith. Science, they call it science. Science of separating S-H-I-T from nuts. It's unbelievable. And then in that one, this Ibn Qutaybah, he's supposedly a smart guy, he says, well, what's wrong with that? Goat is a holy animal. God sent camel. Camel was a good camel, and Salih has a camel, and he showed some signs. This goat is a holy goat. God is able to abrogate his verses to a holy animal. Yes. That's the argument. And therefore, this is unbelievable. God says in chapter 10, verse 100, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلُ الرِّجْسَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ. God commits those who do not use their reasoning to basically miserable life. Unfortunately, look around the world, Muslims, they are committed themselves to miserable life because they betray their reason and the verses of the Quran. You cannot really understand the Quran without using reason. Basically, reason is the first. Do you have any issues with this?
It all has issues.
Well, what does Sunni do right now when we talk about this? If Quran is enough.
I have a couple more questions.
Go ahead.
About the end of the world, when Jesus comes back.
Yeah.
And
well, when we are talking about adultery.
Oh, adultery. I forgot.
What do you mean?
Nothing about adultery was good.
Well, yeah, go ahead. What is in Sunni's mind? If Quran is enough, when we say Quran is enough, what they say?
They say no. They
Because
say,
what are the answers for this question?
the hadiths.
Yeah, come on, shit. You are acting like a Sunni, try to act like one.
Okay, I have a question about more women or miracles?
Whichever you want. Which one? What?
Miracles.
Which miracles?
The moon being split in half.
Okay, where is it? Huh?
Who split it?
Well, the Quran doesn't talks about splitting the moon, but in fact, the language when you study it, it's really taking soil, rock from the moon. It is, and the word split works for that because the same word shaqqa is used to describe when the rain comes, when the soil gets kind of split that little. It doesn't split to a half.
So,
but in hadith,
so the moon never landed in Ali's backyard.
oh, Ali bin Abi Talib's backyard. Yes, according to hadith, my dear son, according to hadith, Prophet Muhammad pointed at the moon, and moon, half of it like Swiss cheese, fell down, half of it on Ali's backyard. This is one of the hadiths, but some of the hadiths do not have this backyard business, but the moon split into half and then came together later. But this has nothing to do with the Quran. The Quran doesn't talk about Muhammad splitting the moon, pointing finger, half of it falling in Ali's. This is other lies. But go ahead.
A controversial question about
what is it?
rain.
Pray. What is it?
How many times do we have to prostrate?
Oh, that's another very issue. How many units? How many times? Well, as I said, this is when we talk about Quran being enough, when we criticize, when we expose the problems with the teachings of Hadith and Sunnah and sectarian teachings. And this is the major questions they ask and you ask. I know they are confused, my son. How many times you prostrate? That's very important, huh? That's very important. We can stone people to death, but we have to know how many times we need to prostrate. Okay,
yes,
that's very important. If you do that, you can kill women, stone to death, but you will go to heaven if you got exactly the right time, many times that you are putting your head on the
That's
floor.
what I'm hoping for.
Okay. Any other question you have from the list of the questions we got from internet?
Is woman's voice haram?
What?
Is a woman's voice haram?
Is more women's voice haram? That's a tough question. Yep. Well, I will not answer. I will not be diverted. Today we are talking about stoning to death, and those issues will come, we'll discuss. But this is another issue.
Can I talk more about prayer or no?
Whatever is you are obsessed with, fixated, you can ask one more question.
I don't think there's exact unity among Muslims on how to pray, where to pray, what to do during gestures and everything.
Yeah, you are right.
Clarify that for me.
Yeah, you are right. In fact, some Shiite, they pray this way, correct? And Sunnis, some of them pray this way, some of them this way. Some of them are sitting down, their finger like this, Shafi'ites. And some of them, Hanafites put like this, on their knees. This is major issues for some people. Some people shake their hands, shake their fingers like this when they say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. And in fact, in the prayer, many, they address to Prophet Muhammad. Listen carefully. Prayer, God says, "Fatim salat li zikri." Observe the prayer for my commemoration, to remember me. You remember God, you give promise to God to be a good person, you ask God for help, for guidance, for clarity of mind. This is the prayer. And you want to be a good person and be, in the day of judgment, have a good kind of account. But while you are sitting, if you follow the Sunni, I don't remember the Shiite thing, you say, التحيات لله أن والصلوات والطيبات السلام عليك أيها النبي. O Prophet, peace be upon you. Imagine, prayer you address to God, Fatiha, you say إياك نعبد, to you we serve, إياك نستعين, only we ask help from you. And while sitting down, you address Prophet Muhammad as a second person. Imagine, it's not alayhi, it is alayka. Alayka means to you. And this is absolutely shirk. Means you consider Muhammad is present there, hearing you, while standing you gave promise to God that you only serve God and you only ask help from God, and sitting down you added another person who is dead, who cannot hear you according to the very book he wrote, and then as if he is there also in front of you like God, omnipresent, and omniscient and omnipresent and serves the prayers, and you address him as Assalamu alaikum. This is shirk, this is fabricated. Imagine, do you think Prophet Muhammad called himself and say, "Oh Muhammad, peace be upon you"? How can he say this? You say following Muhammad, do you think Muhammad in his prayer called himself as a second person? He was schizophrenic? Of course not. Okay, next time.